This conference will now be recorded.
Good afternoon, Director Deere.
Good afternoon. How are you today?
Excellent. Here in the office, I see Director Scott Houston.
Right.
So we don't quite yet have a quorum. However, there are no action items on today's agenda. So a quorum is not necessary to proceed.
Well, good. I'll call the meeting to order since it is 12:30. And we'll go to public comment.
Director Deere, at this time, I do not see any items for public comment. However, if somebody would like to speak, if they could just comment in the comment section, we can make sure to recognize you.
Okay. I guess there's nobody there for public comment. We'll go to discussion items.
Director Deere, we are expecting a special guest today. It's my understanding that Adel Hodge Khalil will be joining us, the new general manager from Metropolitan Water District. I do not yet see him in the attendees, but we will notify you when and if he's able to join us.
Good. Looking forward to it.
As far as discussion items, we do have two today. I'm very excited to announce that we do have Stephen Arakawa, Metropolitan Water District's Manager of Bay Delta Initiatives, who will be providing us with a Bay Delta activities update. Stephen, thank you for joining us.
Oh, sure, you bet. Can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
Yes.
Okay. So would you like me to share the screen? Or are you going to click through it?
I believe we'll have our admin bring up the presentation.
Oh, great. Perfect. Perfect. Well, thanks for having me today. I wanted to go over some key areas on Bay Delta initiatives, and then I think mainly just make sure that we're able to address any questions that you may have regarding what's going on. So please feel free to do so. If I can have the next slide. So the areas I wanted to go over today are just touching on the drought and some of the regulatory issues that are that are affecting the Delta watershed. A little bit about where things are with the state's efforts on Delta conveyance. And then I think real importantly is a significant amount of our work involves the science and habitat restoration. So I wanted to talk to you about that as well, so that you're familiar with what we do and why and that kind of thing. And then emergency preparedness, because with the existing Delta system, the water that we get delivered through the California aqueduct, it's diverted, but it's diverted from the Delta levees, the channels with the Delta levees. And so it's been a high priority for Metropolitan and our board to make sure that the state is prepared for any kind of emergency, whether that's a flood or an earthquake. So I wanted to touch on that. And a good amount of what I'm showing you is information that we've recently reported to the board, the Met board. So it may look familiar to some of you. If you can advance to the next slide. So yeah, this year is pretty dry. We're talking about like the second or third driest year in history, depending upon where in the system you are. And the snowpack wasn't too bad this year, but the water that resulted from that, really the runoff was really less than what was forecasted. So there's probably a combination of things that are going on there, but mainly the warmer weather, maybe the sublimation of the snowpack, the seepage into the ground, and the evaporation. So the state is really grappling with some significant dry conditions in the Central Valley watershed, and that has resulted in both the Bureau of Reclamation, who operates the federal water project, and DWR, that operates the state water project, to petition the state water board for what's called a temporary urgency change petition. And that was something that they both jointly did a few years ago in the recent drought. They've done it again this year for the period between June and the end of August. And it's anticipated that they will do a similar petition in the coming month or so. And what a temporary urgency change petition does is it allows for the state board to do its balancing amongst its different beneficial uses, recognizing the dry hydrology. And in some cases, standards are relaxed to allow for management of water upstream so that the projects are able to get through the year and still protect other beneficial uses, including upstream temperature requirements for salmon and other habitat and water quality needs down the road as we get further into the year. So it's really a management action to try to deal with the dryness of the year. And you know, one of the key things is in managing from one period to the next, it's really a balancing act of trying to deal with what are the habitat requirements right now, and what are the water quality requirements right now in the Delta versus what do we need to be prepared for later in the year when the salmon go upstream and spawn, what kind of temperatures do they need, and being able to meet that. Because if the salmon spawn during a period where the temperatures from the water that's being released is very warm, then you can lose a whole year of salmon that you know, would be produced for the following years. So that's a delicate balancing act. The state board has approved the two projects operating to the modified regulations, and in the end, it means that they've relaxed key water quality standard in the Western Delta area, and it's particularly for Delta agriculture, to allow for that requirement to be met further upstream. And so that's one of the key things that's occurred. And then it also relaxed the amount of Delta outflow requirement. That is the net flow coming from the upstream area out to the Western Delta and out to the San Francisco Bay. They relaxed the outflow requirement from June through August in order to balance these issues that I'm talking about. And then also pretty significantly, they've installed an emergency drought barrier in the Western Delta, in an area called False River. It's in the kind of the Western Delta, just south of the San Joaquin River. And the purpose of that is to help protect the quality of the water that's in the interior Delta, particularly in the south end of the Delta, where Contra Costa area diverts its water supply, and also obviously where the State Water Project and the Federal Water Project divert its supplies from the south end of the Delta. So this barrier that's now installed, it was completed at the end of June, will help with protecting that intrusion of salt that's coming in from the San Francisco Bay and Suisun Bay, and allow that protection with the amount of outflow that is currently part of the temporary urgency change petition. So this could save some water, or this will save some water. It will allow for that water to be to remain in the upstream reservoirs, whether that's Shasta on the Federal Water Project or Oroville Lake on the State Water Project, and that allows those two projects to manage for the remaining part of the year. Like I said, they're looking at what they might need to petition the State Water Board for as we get to the end of August, and what kind of relaxations might be necessary, and that's forthcoming. So that's not done yet. If you could advance to the next slide, please. So I'm shifting to Delta conveyance now, and I don't think you need to know all of what's on this chart. This is the publicly available schedule for the Delta conveyance. But I think the main thing to keep in mind is that all of the state water contractor participating agencies went to their board in the second half of 2020. They went to their board to get approval for planning funds to support the planning effort that is occurring between calendar year 2021 and calendar year 2024. And that's under the Newsom administration for a one tunnel approach for Delta conveyance. And so now we're in 2021. We're significantly into the environmental review process, and that means preparing an administrative draft. So DWR is preparing an administrative draft for the Delta conveyance project. They're also working with their counterpart, the federal lead on the federal side, the Corps of Engineers. And so in the remaining part of this year, most of the effort is on preparing that administrative draft, and then being prepared to provide a public draft EIR as we get to the middle or second half of 2022. And then when we get to 2023, being able to prepare and complete a final draft EIR. And then as we get to 2024, being able to acquire the water rights permits from the State Water Board and other associated permits, along with completion of the EIR. So we're talking about the 4 years, 2021 through 2024, with the state's schedule of completing the planning process in calendar year 2024. I would say, a lot of the effort on the administrative draft, but also the state is doing quite a bit of work on outreach in the Delta community, having what's called stakeholder engagement meetings. A number of stakeholder engagement meetings have occurred each month in the Delta area with Delta interests. They've also done outreach with the tribes on tribal consultations, and they've gone through a process that follows the state's policy and the state law on tribal consultation. And then they've done an environmental justice survey to understand what the values are in the Delta, particularly those that are from underserved communities, disadvantaged communities, to make sure that the environmental process takes into account how the project might affect different communities. You can advance to the next slide. I think the key thing is that they're having some webinars coming up in July and in August and September on different topics, starting with some basics on how the State Water Project is operated and how Delta conveyance would fit in, but also talking about the fishery issues as we get into the next webinar, and climate change, and then environmental justice. So this slide here, and it's certainly on the state's website as well, provides information on how to understand what the state is doing with Delta conveyance planning and how it's reaching to different parts of the communities and stakeholders as they move forward with the planning. Next slide. A lot of our work is really oriented towards understanding how the Delta system works and how the water project operations might be affecting the fisheries, but also how other factors may be affecting the fisheries, whether that's water quality and discharges, whether that's drought, whether that's climate change and temperature, maybe ambient air temperature affecting the temperature of the water, all of those kinds of things. And so a big part of what we're involved in is understanding science and collaborating on the science. And we recently gave a presentation to our board committee talking about, the expertise that we have involved, how we collaborate with different parties. So we collaborate with other water agencies like the State Water Project contractors, but even more importantly, we collaborate with other interest groups. And one of the key areas of collaboration is with parties that were involved in litigation back in the 2010-2011 timeframe. And those parties committed to collaborating on the science and have been doing so since that time. And some of the parties include the fishing interests. Others are environmental groups, the Bay Institute, the NRDC, and other stakeholders that are involved in the Delta process. But then also the fishery agencies on the state and federal side, and the two water project operators, the Federal Bureau of Reclamation and the State Water Project, the Department of Water Resources. So that effort has actually been ongoing for a number of years now, and we feel that it's an important way that we can share information, collaborate, and work together on some studies to understand what's going on with the Delta system, and how can we develop management actions that are better at protecting the fish and protecting water supply reliability. We also participate with in conferences and make presentations on the science studies that we've been involved in. And one of the highlights of that we highlighted in our board presentation is that we've completed and published about 61 scientific journal articles. Are you there?
We can hear you.
Okay, for some reason my screen went blank, so I'm trying to understand what happened there. Let me see here. Okay, so sorry about that. We've been all of the scientific work that we've done, we get it peer reviewed and published in scientific journals, and that's really important to having that science accepted by the community. And so we put a lot of effort into that, and then working jointly with other parties to seek funding for studies that we work together on, whether that's through the Delta Science Program from the Delta Stewardship Council or from other sources. So those are things that we do. Next slide. So some highlights on some key areas of focus. We've been looking at how to create on the left side. There's a box that says effectiveness of watershed management actions, looking at how we can better maintain low salinity habitat in the western portion of the estuary. Doing a lot of work there. Originally, there were salinity control gates that were built a number of years ago for managing duck habitat for duck hunters. That was a beneficial use of the system, but now using those gates in another part of the year for actually low salinity habitat for fisheries. So that's actually been a positive thing, trying to figure out how can we manage the system better for habitat for fish. Delta stressors, we've been involved in some effort to look at the effects of predation, predator fish like striped bass or largemouth bass, and what kind of effect does it have on the native fish like Delta smelt and salmon. And then habitat needs for listed species. We've been involved in helping to create some tidal habitat, both on the Yolo bypass floodplain for fish rearing, but also tidal habitat for fish like Delta smelt and longfin smelt. Metropolitan was involved in with other agencies on developing a project called Tule Red, which is just downstream of the Western Delta, and that provides important habitat for native fish. And then innovation and technology. One of the key challenges we have is being able to sample fish, given that they're in such low population levels, and getting the permits to do so, but coming up with new ways of counting fish or knowing where the fish are, including using DNA sampling of the water to understand where fish may have been. They shed DNA in the water, being able to track where the fish might have come from or where they might be going, and then similarly using what we call a smelt camera, where we funnel the fish towards a camera in a cone, and that helps you to understand the distribution of fish without having to catch them in nets. So that helps with being able to do more studies and get more information evaluated. If I can have the next slide. Certainly, Delta risks are ongoing. Subsidence of those islands in the Delta because of organic soils and oxidation, seismic risks because of the area earthquakes, flooding, I guess the main thing to point to in the next slide is a lot of work on emergency preparedness. If you can advance to the next slide. So since the Katrina event back in the mid-2000s, Metropolitan has worked closely with other state project contractors, but with the state in terms of identifying and developing a way of responding to a major earthquake in the Delta and providing the means for being able to divert some amount of water to meet needs after an earthquake occurs, after a major earthquake occurs. And so a lot of that work was based on some modeling runs with experts involved to look at what would happen with a magnitude 6.5, 6.8 earthquake in that area, and what kind of levee failures might occur. We used a scenario where there could be up to 20 islands that flood as a result of a major earthquake. And we work with the state on developing what we call a freshwater pathway approach, where actions are taken up front to locate material and to improve levees. And then there's actions that you would take after an event to create that pathway through the middle of the South Delta so that water could continue to be delivered through the export pumps. And we gave an update to the board on this back in January, and we're continuing to work with the state on evaluating new monitoring techniques to understand any kind of changes in the levee stability or deformation in the levees, and also working with the state to determine whether any upgrades in the levee requirement standards should be made in order to improve the reliability of the levee systems. Next slide. That covers it. I guess I would say overall, given where things are today with the drought and with you know, the situation of needing to prepare for next year if we have continuing drought, a lot of focus on how the two projects are operated in conjunction with the state water board requirements, but also understanding what scientifically is going on out there so that we can constantly look at measures to improve how we manage the situation. That draws on our science efforts, and then a continuing ongoing effort on Delta conveyance as we go through the 4-year planning process. And then again, trying to take our emergency preparedness plan implementation and maybe continue to enhance that as we go as well. And I'll stop there, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Director Deere, I currently do not see any questions.
How do you raise your hand?
He just left apparently.
Director Deere, actually, I do believe I see our guest, if you'd like to introduce him. I do have, his name is not listed as far as the attendees, but I do see the video for the current General Manager of Metropolitan Water District, Mr. Adel Haj Khalil.
Hey, thank you. How are you, everyone?
Welcome. On behalf of West Basin, welcome.
Thank you very much. So it's EJ. Thank you, Chairman William. Thank you, and Chairwoman Gray, and the board members from Metropolitan. Thank you for this invitation. It's an honor to be with you. I see many of the board members here. I see board members Houston is here. Good seeing you. And board member Deere is here. So good seeing you, everyone. So really, I wanted to come and say hi, and you know, great to hear the presentation from Stephen, and it's great to hear about the challenges we're facing. We're facing many challenges when it comes to the drought and the shrinking water supplies, and we have a lot of things that we need to work on together. And it's an honor to be taken on at the helm of as a general manager of Metropolitan. To me, what we need to do, and this is the message I've been sending to everyone, is it's a message of unity. We need to come together. We need to collaborate. We need to look for new ideas, integration, innovation, inclusion. The Bay Delta is a critical part of our portfolio, but we all know that the water supply is shrinking and many issues we are dealing with. So we're going to continue working with the state, but I think what we need to look for is other sources of water to help us continue the great work that you have all done in increasing our local water supply, shoring up our storage, building on the successes that have been done and doing something similar. But also just serving every member agency. One of my goals is to ensure that we serve every member agency, that we're coming together and ensuring that I'm listening to you, my team is listening to you, your input is being provided to all of us. And it's an honor to really be with you as we really deal with these challenges that we're facing. We're going to think about, how we can meet this future challenge of climate change, shrinking water supply, and also how we're going to address it and provide resilient, safe, reliable, and affordable water for everyone. And that's critical for me, and as I know it's critical for all of us and all of you. But we're going to do it together. My commitment is to start working with every board member, with every member agency, with the staff. EJ and I talked about this yesterday. We're going to have a meeting with the general managers of the water agencies and the member agencies on the 16th to start talking together and figuring out how we're going to move forward. What we have done over the last 100 years and especially the last 10 years has been amazing. What we need to do is now continue working hard on the next future and how we're going to continue being resilient. So storage, groundwater remediation, protect our interests in the Bay Delta and the Colorado, invest in groundwater, recycling water, and look at all the options to provide a diverse portfolio and working together. Conservation has really helped us, storage has really helped us, but we need to continue looking for alternatives. And my goal is to bring us together to what I say is the 3 I's: innovation, integration, and inclusion. And I'm working hard on healing the organization to make sure we have the best staff at Met, and I want to make sure that we're all working together to move us forward. The caliber of the people we have is amazing, and each member agency are great in every way, but we all have different issues, different needs. I want to really try to figure out how we can listen to you, listen to your needs, listen to your priorities, support you, and move forward. And you're going to have a partner in me and my team. We're going to be partners with you. We're going to collaborate with you. We're going to listen to you, and we're going to move forward together. And this is key. This is an opportunity to really tap into some of the funding at the state and the federal level. We're going to work together on how we can knock on the door of the governor and the state to say, hey, as we're dealing with the drought now, and they're going to be asking us for some commitments, I expect them to be knocking on our doors. We need to figure out what we're going to ask back. And so we're going to be working together. I look forward to working with all the managers across the region, with the partners we have at the state. And I'm excited about the opportunity. I'm excited about the ability to really come together and really move forward and really create a future where every member of our region do not have to worry about water. Every business do not have to worry about water. Every contractor does not have to worry about water. We all have to be working together, and the work doesn't happen overnight. It's going to take a lot of work, but my goal is to build on the IRP, to build on the work that has been done. I was looking at the Diamond Valley Lake, and my vision is, can we do something similar along the State Water Project downstream of the Bay Delta? I know many of the staff and others have been talking about it and working on it, but I think we need to figure that out and how we can get the state to really put the money where their mouth is. And I'm going to work hard on that because it's a two-way street. But this is exciting. I'm honored to meet all of you, hopefully in person. And I'm going to try to join as many of these meetings, the caucus meetings, as I can. But you have my commitment. You'll have a partner. You have somebody who's going to work with you, listen to you, and really integrate your priorities into the Met priorities, because Met works for every member agency. We're going to be serving you and giving you the support that you need to move forward and serve your members and serve your residents and businesses and contractors. So with that, I want to say thank you. I'm open to any questions, if that's okay, Chairman William and or EJ.
This is Don Deere. I'm acting chairman since Director Williams isn't present, I don't believe. I just wanted to say that I'm looking forward to meeting you in person, and I'm very encouraged by your remarks. And let me ask my colleagues, as well as anyone else on board here, if they have any questions.
Sure, Director Deere, this is Director Houston.
Go ahead.
Thank you. Hi, Adele. I just want to say congratulations to you and thank you for you making yourself available for our meeting today. And again, I think we're all going to look forward to working with you and your leadership. And thank you for your commitment. You know, this is a very broad, diverse coalition, the whole metropolitan family, as well as Southern California in general. And now, of course, we're at a very critical time. And so I think we have a lot of strategic thinking to do, both each agency level and, of course, Met as a whole. So anyway, looking forward to that. And I do have one quick question for you, because I'm hearing this a lot. You know, we have mixed messaging, if you will, coming from Central California and Northern California on the drought versus how we're looking at it in Southern California. And this is for members of the public, of course. So if there's just any thoughts off the top of your head, as we need to really start looking at that, getting the message out to Southern California about the water issues right now, and what programming we can push forward quickly, which I think, of course, is taking out more grass. But any thoughts on that, Adele?
So that's a great question, Scott and Director Houston. Great to see you, and I look forward to working with you. And I want to acknowledge the other directors. I'm not sure if Director Alvarez Desi is there. I want to say I failed to mention his name, and I want to say thank you. But really, we need to start thinking differently. You know, I know the message has been that maybe we're okay here. But I think the message has to be, this is a critical time that we need to start thinking differently. So, you know, conservation, we need to double down on conservation, but also how we make it accessible to underserved communities. That's an area I want to focus on. How we can build resiliency and cross-connection between our systems to provide this flexibility. One of the things I know, some of our member agencies are dependent on the State Water Project. Do not have access to the Colorado River, and that needs to be changed. We need to figure out how we can better connect our systems, better utilize our groundwater storage. So when we have available water, we can store it, but also being able to move water around. And to me, I got a call, you know, earlier today from Secretary Wade Crawford, and he wants to talk. And I think there's a interest in how we can help the state as a whole. But to me, it's the time to start investing in storage, investing in resiliency, cross connection, you know, getting moving on recycled water. As you know, you guys have been leaders in that in West Basin, working with the city. But I think we need to continue doubling down but some of the stuff that we're looking at, I think there's obstacles, I know, from in terms of tapping into the conservation and the rebates. Some of the underserved communities struggle sometimes in putting money out of their pocket to really tap into that effort. So I want to figure out with you and with the rest of the member agencies and the staff is how we can make things easier for people to implement water saving efforts into their properties and homes without really forcing them to use money that's essential and they may not have it available to them. There's other ideas that we need to talk about and have a discussion on a policy level. Is there something that we need to look into leaky water pipes from the main line to the homes? That may be an area that we need to look into and figure out how we can help in that area. So I think when I say, you know, integration, innovation, and inclusion, the 3 I's I use, it's really thinking about how we can diversify our water portfolio and think in a smart way, look at water management in a different way provide storage, provide cross connectivity between our different water areas and how we can better serve each other. And at the end, including everyone in this discussion. It's not just us doing it, it's everyone part of it. So, we've done some great work, but I think this is the time now to really get ready for the next 100 years. And I'll tell you, you're going to be charting, we will be charting a path forward, a legacy, as the people have done over the last 100 years, building the connection to the Colorado River, the State Water Project. We're going to be building the future for this region together. And it's going to be exciting time. So I would say, let's just open the door. Let's take the blinders off. Let's be creative. And I'm going to look forward to sitting down with the smart managers from all the member agencies, hopefully on the 16th, and start a dialogue that not just talk about what we cannot do. Let's talk about what we can do. Let's figure out how we do it, and let's hold the federal government, the state government, hold them accountable. Because when you invest in us here, you're helping the state, you're helping the entire region, you're helping the economy of the entire country. So I want to push that, and I'm going to ask for your help to do that. So look forward to working on that one. And I look forward to working with you, Scott.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Adele, and thank you, Mr. Chair.
Other questions?
Mr. Chair, this is Director Gray,
Go ahead.
Chairwoman Gray. May I speak? Hi. I wanted to welcome Adele to West Basin. I know this morning I welcome you to the DEI Council, and I just wanted to say welcome to West Basin as one of the board members, and look forward to working with you as a member agency representative. So I just wanted to say that, and thank you for your comments this morning.
And thank you for your leadership, and I look forward to working side by side with you as we move this whole region forward. And I know with your help, we can do it together. Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Gray. Other questions? Well, again, thank you for the report, and we'll go on with the agenda.
If you don't mind, I'm going to be leaving to another caucus. So Acting Chair Deere, my best to the President Harold Williams, and to the rest of the board members. Thank you, and everybody who was here, for allowing me. Look forward to meeting with you in person, seeing you, and hopefully attending more of these caucuses, but also getting together with you. So I have to leave, if you can excuse me, to go to another caucus that's scheduled at 1 o'clock. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much for being here.
All right, thank you.
Bye. Item 4B, is that next, General Manager?
Yes, it is, Chair Deere. The next item we have is a California drought update by Dimitri Polizos from Metropolitan Water District, Team Manager to the Water Resource Management Group. Thank you, Dimitri.
Great, thank you, EJ, and good afternoon, everyone. All right, I believe the screen is sharing. I do hear a feedback. Are others hearing that as well, or are we good on your end?
I think we're okay on our end.
Okay. All right, so quickly here today, I'd like to just talk about our drought conditions, give you an update of where we are, how we got here, and as much as I can give an outlook of where we might be heading. I don't have a crystal ball, but I can do my best to give you what we know given the data that we have as far as what the next year or next couple of years might look like on both of our imported water supply systems, and then provide you our supply-demand balance, our current thinking of where we are there, and the actions we're taking to satisfy the gap. And so Steve really did a great job walking through all of the various actions that have come out of the emergency drought proclamation that the governor did earlier this year and expanded in May. I'll just say, as far as the water supply perspective goes, most of these actions do help in, as Steve said, preserve water up at either Shasta or Oroville, which helps the cause. It helps maintain our state water project allocation, as low as it is at 5%, but it helps maintain that. Except for item 3, the third main bullet here, this particular action where the State Water Resources Control Board has restricted what we call the post-1914 water right holders, that actually has impacted our supply. it reduced the amount of water available for transfer supplies. And as you may know, Metropolitan was in the market to purchase water, what we call transfer supplies, and we did see a reduction to the amount that we had originally anticipated based on this action. So just a quick picture of what what a difference a year makes. Here's the drought monitor graphics here. You can see the intensity of the drought is color coded. You can see the state of California. We've highlighted the upper Colorado River Basin, and predominantly last year at this time we were looking at moderate drought conditions prevailing, if any at all. In Southern California we were not showing any drought conditions at this time. Fast forward to this year, you can see that things have changed dramatically. Extreme and exceptional drought conditions now plague most of the state of California and also the upper Colorado River Basin. So how did we actually get here? Well, Steve also alluded to this. The amount of precipitation, and whether it was rainfall or snowfall, was definitely below normal, but not that bad. 72% here. We're looking at Sacramento, up in our supplies from the California, Northern California. But you can see the disparity between the precipitation versus the runoff. We have never seen this on this system before. To only get 38% out of a 72% precip year is quite unheard of. This caught everyone off guard, also the forecasters at the Department of Water Resources. And as we were going through the year and not seeing that runoff materialize from the snowpack, that's when you started seeing the emergency drought declaration go out in earlier in the year, and then revised to expand to more counties in May, because again, we were not seeing that runoff. This graphic here kind of gives you a sense of why, one of the reasons why this is the case. Each blue dot here represents the runoff for years going all the way back to 1906. And we've ordered these, we've ranked them. So on the far left, you have the lower runoff years and the higher runoff years as you go towards the right. You can see average for this system is about 18 million acre feet. Last year was well below average as well. That's part of the problem. The dry conditions, the warmer weather, Steve mentioned these things. But when you compound this and you have the current year, which is ranking as of now the 4th driest runoff year. So again, those drier conditions, that runoff is just not making it to the reservoirs. And so speaking of reservoirs, one of the key reservoirs on the State Water Project system is Lake Oroville. Here's where we were 2 years ago in 2019. This is an aerial photograph. The dam is located here in the bottom left. If you fast forward now and look at where we are this year, this month, this is what things look like. So that you can see the bath ring that Lake Mead made famous. We're seeing it here as well. Also, we wanted to point out the burn areas from the fire last year, the North Complex fire. But in 2 years, this is what we're seeing now at Oroville. And just a little more detail on that, this graphic is just showing the lake levels. But what I wanted to point out is how close we are to the lowest storage levels that we've ever recorded since filling this reservoir, which was back in 1977. If we look at the projections that the Department of Water Resources puts out for this reservoir to the end of this year, they give us a couple different projections. This blue dotted line gives us the projection of a average fall condition. So you'll see a drawdown as we would expect. In the reservoir. It does dip below the record lowest storage, so we do anticipate seeing this reservoir dip below. We'll have a new record of the lowest, but it does pick up at the end if we have an average fall. If we don't have an average fall and we have a dry fall, the Department of Water Resources is projecting that the reservoir will actually end up at a record low for the year. So that would be something we definitely want to keep our eye on, and this gives us a glimpse of what could happen going into next year. I can't tell you what the final State Water Project allocation will be next year, but I can tell you the initial allocation, which is typically released in December of the prior year, so this December, we should expect a very low initial allocation, and I would not be surprised to see a 0% initial allocation. Now that could change, of course, on the State Water Project system as storms develop. If storms develop, that could turn things around. But as of right now, we're looking at a very bleak beginning of the year going into next year. So similar story on the upper Colorado River, our other imported water supply. Even bigger, larger disparity between the snowfall and the precipitation versus the runoff. 88% of normal precip. Again, not horribly bad. However, only 31% of a normal year's run of what we normally see for runoff. Again, this system, we have seen this kind of disparity in the past, just nothing this large. Same graphic on the right-hand side here, just to give you some perspective. Last year on that system, also below normal. This year, coming in second lowest so far. We'll see. There is opportunities on this system that we don't have on the state. We can see some rains, monsoonal events occurring on this system, so we could see some additional runoff, but time will tell. We'll have to see how the summer goes. All right, and so just a couple photos here. The bath ring is getting bigger here at Lake Mead. I was just at this reservoir. I had an opportunity to boat around in the October timeframe. I am told that the reservoir will be 15 feet lower than it was. I'm hoping we can get the boat in this year. We'll see. The photo on the right shows you some construction work. Looks like they're extending some of the boat ramps there. So pretty dire situation. Here, kind of this graphic here gives you a good sense of where we might be heading on this system. So we're looking at storage levels in Lake Mead in this graphic. The orange are the actuals. Two levels that I want to point out here. The first is the level 1 shortage. That occurs when the reservoir dips below 1075, and the level 2 shortage, which is at elevation 1050. Different operating modes occur when we drop below these levels, and it's not the current level. As you can see, we are below that level. It's where we are projected to be at the end of the year, at the end of the calendar year. So if we are projected to be below this shortage level, this level 1 shortage, things start to get constrained. Some basin states will not be able to access their water. The good news is Metropolitan is not affected by this, at least for a level 1 or a level 2 shortage. We are buffered from that. Arizona and Nevada will take the brunt of any cutbacks on the system. And we do anticipate the first ever shortage declaration to be called for next year. And that's because the USBR does their projections, what they call the 24-month study, and they're projecting the reservoir to fall below this level, or to essentially stay below this 1075 shortage level for the remaining of the year, not just this year, but continue to fall for the next year. So this is the June study that I'm showing you. It's the August study that counts. If the August study continues to show this picture, we would have the first ever shortage declared. Nothing is giving us any indication that this is going to change. So we fully anticipate a shortage declaration. You'll hear a lot more about that, certainly if it does occur. The other thing they do for us, or they give us that second year outlook. So if the end of calendar year 2022 falls below any of these shortage levels, then additional constraints are put on the system. And indeed, they are now currently showing that they do anticipate falling below the 1050 shortage level. Just to recap, Metropolitan would not be impacted if this should occur. We start to get impacted if the reservoir falls below 1045. But in 2 years out, we're getting closer to that. So this is something we're going to keep an eye out on. If that were to happen, if we drop below the 1045, we would be restricted in how much water we can take out of the stored water that we have in the reservoir. So it's certainly something that we're thinking about and keeping an eye out on. Okay, so quickly to wrap things up here, supply and demand balances. This is how our demands are stacking up this year. The largest piece here, of course, is our consumptive and replenishment demand, 1.65 million acre feet. We have losses and obligations that we stack on top of that. That gives us a total of 1.77 million acre feet. That's our current demand forecast. We started the year with a slightly lower forecast, so it has been creeping up. I believe we were at just under 1.6 million when we started the year. So the dry conditions, we're starting to see the demand pick up in the region. So when we compare that demand level with our supplies, you're looking here at our Colorado River supplies, just over 1 million acre feet. That 5% state water project allocation, just a mere 96,000 acre feet. We are in the market and purchasing transfer supplies. This number, 29,000 acre feet, is still subject to change. It has been changing. I mentioned earlier some of those restrictions that made some of that water for sale not available anymore. This number was closer to 35,000, I believe, earlier in the year as we were projecting out. So we did see an impact there. But when you add all this up, we have a total supply of 1.14 million acre feet. So that, of course, gives us a gap of roughly 630,000 acre feet. We'll be able to satisfy that this year. We have water in storage. I'll show you a graphic in just a little bit of how much water we have in storage. But we'll be able to satisfy that by taking or relying on that storage. The other actions that we're taking are to minimize our state water project need for that state water project water, not only to help us out this year, but really to help us out for next year. I mentioned we anticipate a low initial state water project allocation. So the more water we can keep in the reservoirs that we store our state water project, for instance, San Luis Reservoir, our carryover supplies, our banking programs in the Central Valley, the more water we can keep there, the better off we are, the better reliability we will have going into next year to survive what we anticipate the first few months to be a very low initial allocation. So one of the things that we do, just to give you some quick background here, we bring in water to our system on the state side. We have 2 entry points. We call it the East and West Branch. They're shown here. And the green colored pipelines are typically the extent of where that water can reach for areas that can only take water from this system. And then on the Colorado River, we introduce water from the eastern part of our system. And what the yellow or the orange here indicates, again, connections that can only be served from the Colorado River. These other areas, we have flexibility. We can blend between the two. The blue shaded areas show you where we can blend both Colorado and State Water Project water. But for a year like this, similar to what we did in the last drought, we are not blending. We have ample supplies on the Colorado, so we're pushing that system as far as we can go and limiting any blending where we don't need to blend so that we can preserve that State Water Project. So this has been our baseline operation this year. Maximize our Colorado River supply, minimize the amount of water that we're bringing in from the State Water Project. And we're doing more than that. We're doing some extraordinary operational actions to further push the Colorado River. Again, we did some of these back in the last drought in 2014 and 15. We've learned from that. We're doing even more. So things like shifting agencies that have the ability that have multiple connections, both state and Colorado River connections, we're working with them to shift state connections to Colorado River connections. So we're doing that throughout the system where we can. The Gregg Avenue pumping, we did this back in 2015 and 16. This helps push more of that Colorado River water as far west as we can into our system. So Ventura area, Callegas, Las Virgenes, those areas. Unique to this year, and the first time ever, we're able to move water from DVL, Diamond Valley Lake, to the Mills treatment plant. That allows us to, again, preserve State Water Project by introducing water in from DVL to the Mills treatment plant. So Mills would not need to take supplies from the State Water Project this year. So all these actions in total, 135 to 170,000 acre feet of help, basically, to help preserve State Water Project supplies. That may not sound like a lot, or it may sound like a lot, but just to give you some perspective, again, our State Water Project allocation is just under 100,000 acre feet. So these actions more than double what we're actually getting from the state this year. And so here is our end of year balance storage since 2000. And you can see how that has fluctuated over time. Obviously, in drier years, we pull from storage, so you see dips. In wetter years, we take advantage of all the infrastructure that we built and invested in, and we put water into storage. You can see the big jump in 2019, where we were able to maximize or take advantage of the wet year. So this year we're looking at taking over 600,000 or so acre feet out of storage. So we anticipate ending the year at 2.5 million acre feet. So yes, an unprecedented dry year, but given our record storage leading into this year and all the actions that we're making, this will help us put us in a good place for next year should that be another dry year. But more needs to be done, as Adele mentioned. We can't just rely on storage alone. The devil, as they say, is in the details and where the water is, where the water is and where it's needed. And if we continue with low state water project allocations, things will get complicated and challenging for us. So that's why we're making all these efforts to preserve those supplies as much as possible. So again, it's been an intense drought. It caught us off guard with respect to the disparity between how much precip and rain we saw versus the runoff, which is what counts, which is what creates our water supply. We ended up with low storage in key reservoirs, both on the Colorado River system and the state. That's an indication of where we're heading for next year, as I mentioned earlier. So low initial state water project allocation anticipated. It could reverse itself. Things could get wet. We'll have to wait and see. But on the Colorado River, the outlook is a 2-year outlook, and things are not looking good there. Again, Metropolitan is buffered. The state of California as a whole is buffered under the first 2 shortage levels, but the trend is not going in the direction that we want. But overall, we prepared ourselves for this. We will make it through this year. There will be challenges next year if we see very low state water project allocations, but we'll continue to keep folks updated and do what we can to keep reliability as high as we can. All right, that concludes the presentation. Happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions? It was a very thorough report. Thank you.
Thank you.
I have a question, Director Deere.
Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you, Dimitri, for all that information. Just had a question regarding the water transfers. So you had mentioned things are changing, and earlier you were predicting 35,000 acre feet. Now it's going down to about 29,000 acre feet. It may go lower, but just there's a lot of moving parts with that. When do you anticipate that being done, that whole transaction being completed?
The water moves in the summer months. It's only allowed to move during the summer months. So July, August, we will start moving the water now, and it's moving. The outstanding items that are still unknown are, even after the water moves, is the carriage losses. So anytime you move water through the Delta, think of it as a toll or a tax. Right now, the assumption is, I believe what's in the numbers, a 30% carriage loss. Now, the department could recalculate things, and that number could go up or down. That will impact how much water we end up able to get. But that is one of the other moving parts, along with the supply just not being there for purchase. That's one moving part. The other part is, what is that carriage loss going to be? But we'll have a much better idea as we get into the fall months of how much we actually received and when they reconcile all these numbers. So the September, October timeframe, we'll have that more solid.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thank you, Tammy. Any other questions? Again, Dimitri, thank you very much for a fine report.
You're welcome.
Mr. Manager, what's next here?
Yes, thank you, Chair, and thank you, Dimitri, for the presentation. We do not have any items under MWD Other Matters or MWD Consent Counter Action Items, but we do have one pending item, and that's item 9-2, Status of Member Agency Work Groups Review of Demand Management Cost Recovery Alternatives. And we do have Metropolitan Water District's CFO and Assistant General Manager Catano here to talk about this item.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Good. So as you can see from the report, we pulled item 7-2, and basically that was the guiding principles. We brought that item to the board last May, to be approved. The working group has met now about 10 times over the last few months, and they did approve to move forward the rate refinement guiding principles. That item was pending to go for an action next Tuesday, but I pulled it really on the request of the new GM so he can have a better understanding of what we looked at and what the board will be approving. So that item will come back hopefully in August for action. There was not a lot of.
Guys, I don't know if you can hear me. We're getting some static on our end. If you could, your microphone might be a little bit too close, and that
Okay,
might.
is that better?
Yes, it is.
Okay, that better. Okay, so that item is coming back hopefully in August for final action. There was not a lot of controversy. There was only one item that we had some discrepancy from San Diego, and they wanted that item deleted. That was, if you saw that report in May, that was item number 8. And we will be discussing that with the board hopefully in the next month or so. The next, where we are right now with demand management alternatives, the group will be meeting again. And I believe after the GM retreat, we will be meeting again to discuss where we are with the alternatives to be presented to the board. Initially, I wanted to bring that in July, but after our 10th meeting, everybody wanted to take a second look and sort of get some consensus on where we are. We had about 9 alternatives. We shaved those down to about 5, I believe. And from there, we thought we were going to further shortlist that, but the group decided to step back a little bit and see if there's consensus on the key items that I will be bringing to the board. I am not looking for the group to give us one alternatives. I really would love to get a short list for the board to be able to make a decision. So that's where we are, and I hope with our new GM, he also wants to have an opportunity to talk to the group managers and see whether we can come to consensus on the demand management alternatives. Why this is important, and one of the items that I'm bringing forward before the rest of the rate refinement structure is because 2 years ago, the board decided to suspend the collection of that revenue. So right now we're utilizing fund balance to fund the programs. You all know that we have at least I think 500,000 worth of commitments on the LRPs, and we are still funding our conservation programs. So in order for those to continue, we do need a mechanism of collecting demand management. So that is why this specific item is coming to the board. And I would love to see a method developed between now and September rather, because we will start the discussion of our next budget beginning September. So we would love to be able to get that out of the way. It does not mean that we stop the discussion of rate refinement as a whole. That conversation will continue. We'll be looking at, now that we have the guiding principle hopefully approved by the board, we will go back and look at the entire rate refinement structure and see if there's anything we want to change, we want to tweak, or blow it up and start over. But that discussion will continue in sometime in September. So that's where we are. And I did not have a report because we really have not presented anything other than what we brought to the board in May. So I'm happy to take any questions you might have.
Are there any questions? I guess we're just all anticipating something later. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
EJ, back to our agenda.
Yes, thank you very much, Chairman Deere. We are now at item 8, adjournment, along with item number 9 with our next scheduled meeting, which is August 11th, 2021.
All right, then I'll declare this meeting adjourned. Thank you very much, everyone, for attending. Bye.
Thank you.